got 152 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
That's dirt.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Preferred Lines Golf Podcast. It's a pleasure to host your show this evening. My name is Joe Idoni. At Tour Picks, of course, is the place that you can find me, interact with me, send me nice replies, send me mean, hateful DMs, whatever you got to do to make yourself feel better. I'm there for you. Tour Picks is the place to find me. Once again, got to mention this show proudly presented each and every week by the good folks over at Rotoballer. My PGA Power Rankings for the week, top 10. I got notes on each and every player with inside that top 10 up now. Completely free over on rotoballer.com. The PGA team continues to grow there. Spencer Aguiar has some new tools that he's released in terms of DFS projections. We try to pack as much content as we physically can into each and every week, and we hope that you enjoy that. Thank you to them for supporting the program. I got to mention the promo code there is LINES. LINES, all caps. That'll get you 10% off any weekly, monthly, annual sub. Whatever you want to do, we got you covered there over at Rotoballer. Okay. I should have grabbed a water tonight. My voice is a little hoarse. Big day ahead. P-Day, TGL action. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Over the course of the next hour, we'll cover a little TGL. We'll cover some of Ludwig's return revenge tour of Torrey Pines South. We'll go over some course notes and historical data from Vidanta Vallarta in Mexico, the host course once again for the fourth year of the Mexico Open. And I'm going to do it all with a guest that I'm bringing onto the program right now. Returning to the show, a good friend of mine, also a great supporter of Preferred Lines and has been for many years, the founder and owner of the Golf Newsnet, another spot that you can catch this show on each and every week. Welcome back to the program, Ryan. How are you this evening?
Good, Joe. How's it going?
Fantastic. Action-packed day. What more could you ask for on a Monday? A little bit mundane. Some kids are off school. It's P-Day. Then you get 3 electric TGL matches, 1 that goes to overtime, 2 that come down to the very final hole. Good day for the new league, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you could have asked for anything better. I mean, like you said, the new hammer rule worked out really well. I think you could still tweak a little bit, but for the most part, way better than it was. And we talked about, and we probably will talk about how to utilize a little bit better for the players themselves. But you got the chip off, you got chip ins from Fleetwood in the overtime, and from Keegan Bradley for that eagle, which was awesome. I mean, all the matches were good. The guys were playing competitive golf, good energy, good group of guys that definitely have the kind of personality that you need for this kind of thing. And it just was about as good of a day as it was going to be for TGL.
Good energy on a day where you would expect many of them maybe lacking a little bit of energy, coming from the West Coast, coming from a brutal setup and course in Torrey Pines. You know, you've got to fly cross country to Palm Beach. You've got to play early in the afternoon. Awkward situation, of course, like you mentioned, the chip ins. We get an electric one from Justin Thomas to push that match to overtime. We get the chip off where Tommy Fleetwood goes in the hole, but LA ultimately falls to Atlanta. Next 2 matches were tight throughout. Wyndham Clark eagles the final hole of the night in a triple header to win the match and have the Bay go 3-0 now. You mentioned some things that, you know, I commend them, and I think a lot of people do. I got a text from my friend Scott Blumstein earlier, and I'm just going to read it here because I think I've got many that are just like this, and it echoes the sentiment of so many people. Credit to them for the hammer thing. It was really bugging me, and they found a great solution. Dude, I'm in. I wasn't until now, but I'm in. So many people, I think, have echoed this, and people are naturally skeptical. Where have you fallen in terms of like fandom and your appreciation, or maybe the opposite for TGL thus far?
I wasn't really sure when they announced the idea how this was going to go. And I had a healthy skepticism about it, but was hopeful that they had thought this through and that this would be executed pretty well. And I feel like from when I actually saw the product up until this point, I've been a supporter of the concept. I like the idea. It's different. It's quirky. It's a little weird. That's okay. Golf can have that. Golf has shown over the last 4, 5, 6 years with how it's grown that you can have golf adjacent stuff be really successful. And this is just a professionalized version of that on TV. And I think they've made consistent improvements, not only in terms of some of the rulemaking with the hammer, but also just in terms of presentation. The pin cam thing they brought out today is spectacular.
Fantastic.
That's got to be on the PGA Tour next week. I mean, that thing is awesome. Why has no one brought that out before? And they've just started to, and they've been listening, and you can tell they've been listening to what people have said on social media. And I mean, they favorite posts and stuff like that, but also that they see the feedback, and sometimes within one telecast, they make a change or make an addition or make it better. And I think they've started to zero in on the holes that are most interesting or most dramatic, maybe, and try to play those. And I think for a second season, maybe they'll make some additional changes, like having lies of different angles and upslope, side slope, downslope that they'll be able to put on pneumatic lifts. I think that's probably coming. That's probably the next thing for next year. But they've iterated so quickly and they've made it so much better in the space of month and a half.
Yeah. I really commend them on being totally open to feedback. I was there week 1 when it first launched, and one of the things they told all the people in the media center, and it was a crowded, packed house there behind the big screen the first week, and they just asked people, basically before they took us out onto the field to see it for the first time, look, you guys are all like on the pulse of social media and in these circles. We want to hear you. And I actually watched like mid broadcast, multiple people stand up and go over to them like, hey, I'm hearing this. Dan Rappaport, I know, like went right over to them, was like, hey guys, like this is some of the feedback that I'm getting. And they're taking that and they're making adjustments kind of on the fly. I think the broadcast has gotten significantly better each and every week. They're starting to figure out the timing with how to interview players, not getting in too many questions so they can still cut back to the action and kind of, is it gimmicky? Yes, but I still want some sort of explanation of the strategic elements of these holes. Yeah. Even though they are gimmicky, why are they choosing the line that they chose? If there's 3 fairways, what's the strategy behind it, and where's the risk reward elements? I think it's important to explaining the story to more of a casual audience that they clearly have tuning in.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I've started to hear them use strokes gained statistics now that they've had enough matches to have strokes gained on these holes. So that's interesting to hear. They're going to find a way to integrate that. But I agree with you that they should have kind of overlays, almost kind of like what they do with the Aon risk reward holes, with a little bit more data of, all right, if you go left, here's what the scoring average is. If you go right, here's what that is. Here, that kind of stuff that they can integrate pretty quickly, I think. And I think you have an interesting point about that. They've tried to kind of find the mix between having Matt Barry and Marty Smith, more Matt Barry than Marty Smith, be part of the storytelling, while at the same time knowing that the guys themselves are the best storytellers of how to play golf at the highest level. So if you could kind of get them to, especially when they were showing the shots of the overhead shots of the hole, like where do you want to orient the screen, where your aiming point is? Well, why there? Tell me a little bit more about that. If you could just get a little bit more out of them about the strategic decisions they're making, I think that would make it so much better. I mean, they're just little things that will add a lot to it.
Absolutely. And speaking of storytelling, Ryan, I wanted to ask you and have some of the people that listen to this show learn a little bit more about your story and where you started with golf content. I know some of the early days were over at Golf Channel, and what from those experiences, since you've been doing it for so long, made you take the chance on starting your own network and trying to do something a little bit different like Golf Do That?
Well, I mean, I definitely have a gray beard now, and I didn't 20 years ago. I didn't even have a beard 20 years ago. But I think the short version of that is I really wanted to be in golf media, and I left a day job that probably had way more growth potential in the long haul to do this because I loved it. I love golf. I love sports journalism. I love sports content. And I wanted to do it for a living. And I'm not willing to give that up very easily. So doing Golf Newsnet, building the website, kind of building that out, finding a way to make an audience. I really wanted to make Golf Newsnet an omni-channel thing that you could listen to it, you could watch it, you could read it, and hopefully maybe someday have events and experience, so to speak. But that's down the line. But my thought was, if I could create something that could be a great platform for good content, and not just mine, for other people, because the hard part of this is creating the platform, is getting an audience big enough that people will pay attention to what you have to say, and whether it's good or bad, that they'll pay attention to it. And so if I can have gone through the work of building the platform and still doing the content, but I get a lot of joy in creating that space for people like yourself who are doing good things and deserve to be seen and heard by more people. And we can go, okay, let's open that door for you and hopefully be successful to that end. And I think that's where TV is. I think that's what the radio's been. The website has kind of always been my baby, and probably will be till the day it's not. But at least those other kind of bigger megaphones that we could have, they could be great spaces for people that aren't just me or, specifically tied to Golf Newsnet.
Yeah, and I appreciate your support of this show on there as well. It's an awesome avenue that I'm proud to be a part of. Where, if someone doesn't currently have access, where can they get access to it? What type of outlets are you available now? And I know that there's been a little bit of a recent expansion there, and where are you sort of looking to over the next year to have as many people as possible have access to your channel?
Yeah, so the TV side right now, we're on 2 different platforms besides the ones that we own and operate. So Free Live Sports is a relatively new one. That was the first one we started on. Another one called Freecast. It's a little bit more seasoned, has some more channels on it, not as sports focused. Then we're going to be soon on a platform called Zine, which John Stamos does ads for. They're owned by a company called Local Now, which will be on as well. Let's see who else. Distro TV, Multi TV, a couple of smaller ones. But for us also, it's going to be really important to have apps out in the major streaming platforms. So we just introduced a new one for Roku, so you can watch the channel live and watch everything that we air on demand, which is really important. We're updating those apps that we had for Amazon. We had kind of 2 different apps. We're going to make them one and upgrade it so you can watch everything there. We had 10,000. We've had 10,000 people download those apps over the years and use them. We just never had a TV station to give them before. So that upgrade will be really helpful. And then we're going to come out with apps for Samsung and Vizio TVs, and probably LG TVs a little bit later on the year, but Samsung and Vizio in the short term, because those are extremely popular platforms that people stream a lot of programming from. And there aren't a ton of apps on those spaces right now, much less a golf one, so that we can give golf content to those audiences. And then ultimately we'll probably be on 4 or 5 more different streaming services, Fubo, Pluto TV, Plex, probably Sling, Zumo, and then the kind of big ones are Roku channel, Samsung TV Plus, Vizio Watch Free, and LG. And even if we didn't wind up getting on Samsung and Vizio, if we have apps there, at least we're on that ecosystem. So we're trying to kind of check all the boxes of places we want to be, and we know where people are watching, and kind of pivot our way toward where we need to be. It just kind of takes time, and that's definitely the entire process of all doing this channel, doing this entire thing. Golf Newsnet over all these years has been an exercise in patience of trying to learn that nothing happens on your schedule. Everything happens on someone else's. With the stuff that you really want, most things happen on someone else's schedule. So, but you need those people. You need good partners. You need people who will help you, who will say yes, who will encourage you, who will point you in the right direction. And if they're kind enough to take that time, put that energy and effort into it, then it's worth the wait.
It's amazing, dude, and extremely commendable. I wanted to say thank you for that, having me be a small part of that. But what you've been able to do and kind of stay on the forefront of all this stuff. It probably wasn't even a thought to have all these different apps and have people watch TV through them. And now it's to the point where I switched to YouTube TV and finally cut the cord a couple of years ago. And that keeps, every time I look at my thing, it keeps going up. And I'm considering why am I paying for this? And you start to look into Hulu Plus, and then all of a sudden just the stuff that comes when you buy a TV preloaded on your television. I'm starting to realize that, a lot of the stuff that I like is already on there, and I don't need to be paying $100 a month for it. So awesome job, rooting for you here.
Appreciate that.
So cool to see. But let's get back to kind of some of the stuff we saw this last week at Torrey. Ludwig got his revenge, machine level stuff. I'm so impressed with the speed he plays the game with and how fast he moves in and out of shots. His mentality on the course of seemingly willing to disregard poor shots whenever he does make them and move on and just be so calm and cool and collected out there at all times. I mean, the drone TrackMan shot that they showed on 18 with Atlanta, like that was an all-time TrackMan shot from Ludwig. Now that, some questioned the clutch gene and the ability is still looking for that big win. Now that he's got that off his back, do you think this opens up his potential even more for just having a massive year in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I am reluctant to kind of throw him into the Scotty Scheffler stratosphere right away, right? Because that's 13 wins. That's still a lot of wins, right? In a very short period of time. But I feel like Scheffler winning in Phoenix was the lid lifter. Like, I can do this. I am good enough to do this. I can go win against a major championship caliber player. There's no reason I can't. And I think this could be that jumping off point for him. And also, in a weird way, I think TGL kind of helps because people seem to like him. I mean, he's got a great personality. He's very enjoyable, a very expressive guy. I think it's kind of hard not to like him. Mm-hmm. He kicks ass. He hits the ball a long way. He plays quick. He's a winner. I mean, what don't you like about that? So I hope that this past weekend at Torrey and then a little bit of tonight thrown into it too, and TGL rest of the way, is a reminder to him that a lot of people are rooting for him, are vested in him, are interested in him as a golfer and human being. That goes a long way. And like you said, that he lets kind of all the stress kind of go it's just great to watch. But it's also a little bit more expressive version of that than Scotty, who just kind of looks stoic all the time. And that's a good thing for a professional golfer. It just looks a little bit more entertaining when Ludwig's stoic than Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I kind of took away is the signature events really have a way. And I was kind of anti-signature event maybe a year ago, but now I'm seeing the path, and we get the opportunity to get Scotty and Rory teeing off in the same group, and we get Ludwig his big stage for his opening moment, and you present opportunities there to other players, to Patrick Rogers, to my guy Denny McCarthy, who I was rooting for. First of all, on Denny, I don't want to hear anyone disparage McCarthy. He scrambled his butt off. He's close. It's going to happen for the guy. He ran into like Batia on an insane run. He ran into peak Victor Hovland at the Memorial for his signature breakthrough victory into stardom. The same thing happened to him this week with Ludwig. I think his time's going to come, but ultimately these events are set up so that we can make new stars or continue to elevate the ones that already exist. And I think the program is working, and I'm sort of a fan of it now.
Yeah, I think the No Laying Up guys pointed this out, so I want to give them some credit to it. But having Torrey Pines South host two different events in a row, one signature, one regular, could not have been a more stark comparison. And I think it was a great one. It worked out because you had 5 hour and 40-minute rounds for threesomes at Torrey in much tougher conditions. I get that. And then you had twosomes off the first tee playing in just about 4 hours. And the golf was dramatic and great. And you had the best players in the world competing. And they were all basically atop the leaderboard. It just, all right, it kind of sunk in. The signature events are great. Well, I like there to be closer to like 90 people in them than 72. Sure, okay, that's fine. But we're kind of nitpicking a little bit. And I think that it also makes the case a little bit for the 100-player exempt tour instead of the 125-player exempt tour. Because if you're going to tell me moving forward that Most events are 120 players. Those rounds are still going to be quicker. You're still going to have everyone that mattered last season as part of it. You could still bring in the players that came off of the Korn Ferry Tour or the DP World Tour, get them in fields. There's no kind of scrambling to get the right players in the fields for the most part. I think they've got it to the right place, I think. And this was probably just that first proving point of, yeah, this is the way to go.
This is the way to go. I think you're right. And interestingly, now in year 4 of LIV, I think they're starting to wonder, is this the way to go? And I think some of the players are thinking that. I mean, Adelaide, obviously, I think from a metric standpoint, in terms of attendance, in terms of publicity, in terms of ratings, probably their biggest event of the year. Confusing to me why they would, they come out with their schedule so late, why they would elect to go head to head with a signature event in the Genesis versus this week in Mexico. I think there's some strategic errors that they've made over the past year, and some of these contracts are starting to come up. So that's what I wanted to ask you about, if you have any insight or any reporting that you've seen on that. It's interesting to me because I think 4 years ago when these players joined, you talked earlier in the show about like sort of golf adjacent opportunities for fans in the audience. Well, there was really a finite amount of golf adjacent opportunities for players before. They didn't own their own media rights. There was no such thing as YouTube Golf. There was nowhere that they could go play somewhere like TGL to increase their brand. I think, sponsors really didn't know what to do with a lot of the players, the top end, besides maybe Rory and Tiger. Now those things kind of exist. And did it take LIV for it to happen? I think that's up for debate. But the reality is 4 years later, there are opportunities for someone like Bryson DeChambeau to make a lot of money with selling ads and sponsorships just on YouTube. If he wants to join TGL, he'll be one of the most popular players in the league as soon as he steps foot in the SoFi Center. His contract specifically is the one that I'm wondering about, because I look at what John Rahm got, and I think Bryson's worth more. Like, I think he deserves an absolute bag if he wants to stay with LIV. Do you have any insight on if those negotiations are ongoing? And if so, how are they going?
I don't know specifically for each player, right? I mean, I know the deal that most of the top players signed were either 3 or 4 years. And obviously we're in year 4. So if you were an OG with LIV, your deal's coming to an end. I mean, think about Dustin Johnson or Phil Mickelson. Those guys got paid an exorbitant sum of money to go play this league. And no offense either of them, they're Hall of Famers, but they're irrelevant. Yeah. Why would LIV agree to sign them back to the league for anything more than, I don't know, Sergio? Like Sergio's had nice research. Like what is the market value for those guys?
Right.
For when they jump, the market value was that they're willing to jump. You're paying a massive premium for that to get off the ground. Well, LIV is off the ground, and they have come to realize that maybe their future is with younger players, not and a mix of star players. So who do you identify and keep? Phil doesn't need to be there, even though he obviously was instrumental in this thing getting off the ground in the first place. Yeah. Dustin Johnson the same way. Bryson, like you said, is probably worth more now than he was when he signed.
For sure.
And that's taken the premium away from it. I mean, he has made himself so tremendously valuable because of LIV. It's been a good thing for him. Brooks Koepka is probably about the same value. I mean, he was the first LIV major winner, Mm-hmm. But then you've got Cam Smith, who defected after winning the Open. It just hasn't he hasn't maintained that elevated status. So his value's gone down. If you're LIV, I don't know how you decide who you're going to spend money on, knowing what your ratings are, knowing what your business model is. There's a kind of geeky, money in sports newsletter that I read, and Jeff Shackelford's mentioned it a couple different times. And they've done a kind of deep dive into what the Saudis have spent on LIV. And it's probably somewhere in the area of $5 to $7 billion.
Yeah.
And what have you got to show for it? Mm-hmm. And I realize the Saudis are incredibly wealthy, and they can spend their money on whatever they want. And they could probably do it forever, and it would probably be okay. Be a rounding error. But at a certain point, they've got to decide, do we just keep throwing good money after bad for what we're getting in return? Or do they say, okay, we spent this money to be able to come to the table with the PGA Tour, make an investment. We can kind of sort of retire LIV Golf as a little bit of a series or a team thing or a shorter thing, whatever it looks like. But they got to the table. Is that mission accomplished? Probably. And then they dump their money into sponsoring events on the PGA Tour. And they have some Aramco series or PIF series or whatever. And all the players still get to, have $20, $25 million tournaments. They're happy. Saudis are happy. PGA Tour is happy because LIV's effectively done. And we move on. That's probably where this ends up if it all comes back together.
Yeah, I hope it happens. Hope it happens soon. I think we're headed in the right direction, but I've said that for quite a while, Ryan. And it's just interesting because I feel like when these negotiations come about with the individual players, I feel like LIV has a lot less leverage to these players than they did. I think at the time 4 years ago, what's the biggest problem for players? How am I going to be perceived when I sign with the Saudis? I don't think they have to worry about that nearly to the same degree they did 4 years ago in terms of the media backlash. But what they were selling at the time is a massive increase in purses, a smaller schedule, and the ability to kind of own a team or whatever it was, but guaranteed contracts, a smaller schedule, these giant purses. And they were also selling like you're still going to get your OWGR points. You're still going to compete in majors, which is what they told all of these guys. That's kind of gone. I don't think any of these players believe that that's happening anytime soon anymore. John Rahm just fell to like number 52. So it's going to be a real problem for Joaquin Niemann and Tyrrell Hatton and these guys to continue to get into majors. That's a huge con for them to re-sign. They're no longer really playing for that much more money.
Yeah.
They're playing for on the PGA Tour and these signature events. The schedule is a little bit shorter. I just think that they have a lot less leverage, and particularly in the case of Bryson. His star potential and magnitude is 5x what it was when he signed. So he's going to get a massive deal. But speaking, Tiger touched on the merger a little bit on the coverage. He said that we're close. Yes and yes. He said that we could talk about it forever. But I want to ask you about Tiger, because what he also said is they asked, he needs reps. And he talked to Jim Nantz about that. And he wanted to play in Genesis because he's like, I need tournament reps. I feel pretty good. He's up tomorrow night in TGL. I'm going to be there. But where is he going to play? Do we see him in Florida? Like, do you think he takes his lifetime exemption into the Players? Do you think he plays Arnold Palmer? Is there any chance he calls up down the street to the Cognizant is like, hey, I want to show up there? Like, because they're not saying no if he says he wants to come. Nobody's saying no.
My first thought is he'll play Bay Hill because he wants to go where he's comfortable, right? I mean, Bay Hill's always been good to him, right? I mean, it's 7 wins. In terms of having to hack it out of that rough, though, for 4 days, that might not be so fun. Maybe not great for the back. I mean, maybe. But obviously, he'd be welcome to the Players. Again, they're both really hard scoring tournaments. Like, in terms of just getting reps, you'd think one of them would want to be if I played well 20 under is a good week tournament, instead of if I played well 10 under or 5 under is a really good week, because Bay Hill is going to be hard scoring and it's up and down at TPC Sawgrass, but to shoot 4 rounds in the 60s there is an achievement.
Correct.
So does he go find? I mean, but it's not like PGA National's easy either. So
I just think the strength of the competition, I think he has to walk before he can run. I don't think he's ready to go up against the top 50 in the world. As much as he may believe he is, I don't know that's the best situation for him to try, because he still believes he can win one of these tournaments. I just think his odds exponentially increase at somewhere like PGA National or Valspar or something like that, where he's had success, he's won before. But he's also going to get to play, doesn't have to go against these titans of the game that he's not fit to compete with right now.
Yeah, Valspar is an interesting one. I mean, he did play there, I guess that was 17 when he played Valspar and got close. I mean, I think it was top 5.
Won the Masters, right? Right after that?
Had success there. I mean, never really had any intention of playing there otherwise. So maybe that's in the back of his mind of, hey, I played well there. It's not too far to drive. Maybe he wants to go do that. But yeah, I think between PGA National and Valspar, I would go pick Valspar, because then if you went and played Bay Hill and Valspar, let's just say you got 2 tournaments, you got a tough one, a sort of easier one, even though it's not like Innisbrook's easy. And then maybe that's where you roll the dice and you go down to Augusta National and see what you got.
Let's talk about what we got this week in terms of course stuff for the Mexico Open. We're back at Vidanta, 7,400 plus yards, par 71. Course play is very long. I think in part due to the paspalum grass, which you just don't get a ton of roll off of. There's really no rough. Resort style wide fairways, really what we've seen in terms of past tournaments is this can really be a bit of a bomber's paradise. You send it as far as you can off the tee, you try to get close, and you just go find it and you hit a 175-yard approach shot from there. I wouldn't necessarily, I think sometimes you get loops into this like birdie fest type. It's not in like the top 10 easiest courses, although you'll see some really low numbers. The average score is not that low here. There's just really long par fours. There's 7 over 450 yards. This week I did note that there are 10 players in the field who competed in the Genesis last week at Torrey Pines. Obviously, Rogers T3, Batia T9, Mike Kim, Jake Knapp also finished in the top 20, as well as Kevin Yu. So there are some good players that are showing off here. Obviously, Maverick McNeely withdrawing would have likely been the tournament favorite here. But another sort of interesting element to pay attention to is just a ton to play for a lot of guys who, we're shrinking the PGA Tour, who need to secure their status, who need FedEx Cup points, who want a tour card. They're resetting the Aon Swing 5 as well this week. So essentially the top 5 players from the Mexico Open and the Cognizant Classic will then get in to play API, could then get themselves, whoever wins here is going to get themselves into the players, is going to, potentially be exempt into a lot of the major championships and signature events throughout the season. There is a ton on the line, and what feels like a little bit of an off week, there's still a lot to play for. What do you have historically from like notes or what you expect from a player fit perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the first thought is it's a bomber's paradise, right? I mean, look at who's won or who's done well here between Finau, Rahm, Jake Knapp, Kitayama, Steve Yeager. I mean, go down the line of guys who finished first, second, or third in this event. You're like, all right, they all hit the crap out of the ball, and they're playing a resort course to big targets. I mean, they're big greens. Greg Norman loves a big green. He's the architect. And you're going to have a lot of 25, 30, 40 footers on paspalum that can be really weird to putt on. I mean, it's weird to hit irons from if you're not used to it, but it can also be really weird to putt from. So there's probably a day of acclimation there, and maybe that makes it harder to make birdies. Like you mentioned, I mean, putting on a paspalum surface versus even a Bermuda, that's probably worth a stroke and a half. You don't see a ton of paspalum unless you're playing oppo events on the PGA Tour. So it's kind of hard to acclimate to that. So I think that also kind of helps to a degree with lesser known players who've probably played paspalum more recently than some of the guys who played Genesis. Those are guys who are going to go see Bermuda and Bent a whole lot. They're not going to see paspalum. So maybe there's some advantage to that. But I think generally speaking, it's just hit as far as you can, hit a lot of greens and give yourself a lot of looks. And like you said, it's not a 24 under tournament. It's a 16, 17, 19 under tournament. And that is a significant difference. I think that this is, like you did mention, and I've mentioned this as well, this is a huge week for the Swing 5 concept. It's a huge week just for points, for reshuffle guys. We're at the reshuffle points now, where if you don't get any points this week and you're a KFT grad or a DP World Tour grad or a Q School grad, you are in deep trouble, like real deep trouble until, you're going to get probably into one or both of Valspar and Cognizant, but you've got basically one more crack at it, or you're waiting until May and to have another chance at getting this right when the Masters is over and the Heritage is over. So there is a lot to play for this week. I think a lot of pressure, even though the purse has gone down versus prior years, the pressure is significantly higher.
Yeah, I agree, and a lot to play for. And from trying to look into data and stats, there's so many unique. There's a lot of like unusable noise out there this week that is not going to matter, particularly on this course. Wedge play, you have to look at past balance specific stuff. This is not any difficult course to gain strokes off the tee. The fairways are so wide. Driving distance almost doesn't matter. You're just hitting it as far as you can so many times. And I say that to kind of bring in some of the rabbit hole stuff that I've been talking about a lot of times on the show. Now you can use the promo code TOURPICS, 25% off there. I'm going to bring up my model now, Ryan, just to kind of showcase what we've got on tap for this week. Let me find it here. BetSperts. Okay. Let me go. Excuse me 1 second. I'm just trying to share my screen here. Boom. Okay. Here's my top 10, but this is what I kind of wanted to point out. Carry distance, so important on past balance. You got to be able to carry. You can look at things like strokes gained total on resort courses, specific to those sort of environments. You can look at strokes gained total on past balance. You can look at strokes gained total of Vidanta. Tee to green, driver heavy, weak fields. You have so many different unique filter options that you can look for. Past Palom putting, like you mentioned, is so much different than the typical course that we see. These long iron approach shots from the fairway, you are not going to be hitting out of rough because there is no rough. So you need to see, look at the players who do well out of the fairway from 200 plus yards. Let me see who number one is this week. There are several guys that don't factor in. Nick Hardy, Toasty, Buckley, Kitayama's up there. Alex Smalley's up there. Those are sort of the top 10 players that I have for this week. I'll bring it up and just kind of show the top 10 here in 1 second. So let's look at the rank for the week and tell me if you disagree strongly with any of these or you like any of these sort of things that the model spit out this week. Kitayama, number 1, Matty Schmid, number 2, Alex Smalley, 3, CT Pan, 4, Batia, 5, Jaeger, 6, Chan Kim, 7, Highsmith, Young, Michael Kim round out the top 10. Anyone there that just kind of was higher than you expected to see, or someone in there that just doesn't fit the mold?
I mean, I have Kitayama as 2.
Yeah.
And my model looks more holistically, generalizes a lot more. I don't do as many specific things. I mean, I love the rabbit hole, and it's really an awesome idea. It just makes it easier for my brain to kind of start with a general ranking and then start plucking ideas and guys out. But Kitayama 2, Jaeger 3, Akshay 10th, CT Pan 9th. So, I mean, we've got a lot of overlap so far. I like Taylor Moore a lot this week, Ben Silverman as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of overlap there, and I can understand why Matty Schmid would come out high, especially in these kind of you can bang it anywhere tournaments. Chan Kim and Joe Highsmith, I do like quite a bit. Carson Young is a horse for course play here, a couple of top 15s here in 2 out of 3 years. So, I mean, I think a lot of the same guy, and Michael Kim's been playing probably some of the best golf of his career the last 18 months. It hasn't been some of the best. It has been the best golf of his career the last 18 months. So, a lot of the same guys would line up, whether they're in the top 10 of my ranking or whether I would be inclined to pick them otherwise.
Cool. All right, let's hit the board, see if we can find a couple picks. All right, Mexico Open betting board for the week. Akshay Batia, 14-1 is now your favorite since Mav withdrew. Rasmus Hogard, 18-1. Kitayama, 22-1. We mentioned Patrick Rogers, 22-1. Sam Stevens, 22. Kim there at 28. Taylor Moore at 28. Aaron Rye, 30. Jaeger, 30. Those are all the players sub 30-1, Ryan, this week. Who's your favorite one of the bunch in terms of value?
Probably Jaeger. I mean,
same.
His MO, he likes to play in the Southwest from what I've gathered based on his results. I mean, this isn't the Southwest United States, but we're close enough. For all intents and purposes. He loves hitting the ball far. He loves kind of just banging it out there and then seeing what happens. I mean, that is right up his alley. I do love Kitayama this week. I mean, number 2 on my model. I like him because the concept of strokes gained off the tee works in his favor, whether there's no rough or a lot of rough. And that's why you could win at Bay Hill and you could be really well liked here, because it doesn't matter whether you're hitting into deep stuff or short stuff. If you're hitting to the same place and hitting it farther than everybody or most everybody, you're at an advantage. I mean, that's just strokes gained off the tee. So I do like both those guys quite a bit. I would stay away from Akshay. I mean, I like that he showed some life at Torrey Pines. Michael Kim's just too short. You know, it feels like that's where my brain tends to go to, is guys who have at least some element of success, or, and I'm sure we'll talk about some KFT guys later that have the swagger to do it. They just need a place where it's kind of easier to do it, like this week.
Absolutely. You had mentioned earlier in the show Taylor Moore. He fit incredibly well in some of the stuff that I'm looking at, particularly in some of the long iron play that we've seen recently out of Taylor Moore, par 5 scoring, that kind of stuff. But Jaeger was the guy for me. 30-1, I just felt like was a value price. I had him written up. I think, let me just look where I had him in my power rankings this week, because he was really high. I think I might have even had him, Steven Jaeger, top 5. So top 5 of my power rankings. These are his performances at Vidanta World. Let me just pull it up on the other screen, bring that back aboard. But you look at T3, T18, T15 in his 3 runs there, obviously gaining a ton of strokes approach, pretty good putting, 10 strokes tee to green, 5 strokes tee to green. He's just been really solid here. A player who I think has worked hard on picking up additional speed in recent years. He's gotten a lot more ball speed, and I think it's going to pay off, specifically when you get to courses like this. Good showing at the Sony earlier this year, you know, in kind of a coastal environment where he's had some success in the past. And a guy who, frankly, you know, has shown winning potential. He stared down Scotty Scheffler this past season. So it's worth something, especially when you show up in a field like this, to know that you have that potential to actually do it. Jaeger was the guy for me at 30-1. Moving kind of down the board a little bit, Harry Hall, Bo Hostler, Kevin Yu, Alex Smalley, Jake Knapp, who was the guy who we hit at this event last year. I think it's the same number, 40-1. So Knapp's back here. Niklas Norgard Mueller, they're at 45-1. CT Pan, Nikolai Hogard, Thornbjorn, Grayson Sig. These are some of the names. Thorn Bjornsson, I've heard his name brought up a couple of times at 60-1 this week. Anyone in this mid-range here that you've taken a liking to based on a course fit?
I do like Knapp. I mean, it just feels like he was kind of undervalued maybe in the early portion of the season because he's playing better competition. Again, good vibes. I feel like he's in probably a pretty good place game-wise, weaker field. I like that. I love Nicholas Norgard. I think he could be a great player a couple of years from now. He's played very well in DP World Tour events, including on links courses. Not that it's the same thing, right? I mean, but wide open spaces, plenty of place to play. That's a hallmark of a lot of links golf, especially at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championship, where he's gotten close a couple of different times. So maybe he's kind of the warm version of links, you know, maybe thought of the week. I think those two guys probably stand out to me, at least among that bunch. I do like Harry Hall's game a lot for this kind of golf course. I mean, he won the ISCO Championship on a course about this long, a little bit longer rough, you know, by about an inch, but same idea, like weaker field, got to go low. You can hit it as far as you want. Bluegrass is a little bit weird of a grass, so is Paspalum. So I could see some parallels between that too.
The guy for me was Alex Smalley. So ranked 3rd in the model that I brought up earlier, 40-1. I think it's a very fair price. Now, missed the last 2 cuts here, but a T6 back in 2022 in his debut here. Just been really good on par 5s. I think that's a really key element in terms of kind of unlocking that really low mid-60s round that you're probably going to need 3 of in order to compete here. Good tee to green as well. Awesome in terms of long iron approach. When I filtered that in, approaches from over 200 yards, I have him ranked 2nd in the entire field over the last 36 rounds. So Smalley's really sharp with his long irons, scoring pretty well on the par 5s. Decent 38th in ball speed in the field, you know, long enough, I think, to compete at a place like this. He's certainly not going to be like at a Knapp or a Hogard level in terms of distance, but I think he'll be able to get it out there enough to kind of take advantage with whether he's got a 4 or 5 iron in his hand, where he really has excelled lately. T21 in 11th place in 2 of his last 3 starts. So showing a little bit of glimpse of form. And Smalley's just a guy who I've probably had it double the number way too many times and been searching for that victory and kind of hanging on. So maybe this is the week we finally get him right. Now, you mentioned there were a couple of guys, I won't mention all of them sort of in this long shot range, but maybe a couple of Korn Ferry guys, maybe a couple of guys popping over from the DP World Tour, but players that you think specifically fit this course from a mentality, from they're used to these type of resort paspalum courses, or they just absolutely smoke it off the tee. Give me one or two names of guys you're looking at.
I mean, Aldrich Potgieter is up on that list right there. I mean, I've seen him anywhere from 70 to 100. I'm sure the hundreds are long gone. I think a lot of people have the same idea, just hits the ever-living crap out of it. If it gets windy, he hits a 2-iron like 300 yards with run out. I mean,
that's crazy.
So he can hit. That's insane. I think that really works to his mentality. I'm a huge fan of Frankie Sappin III. I think he's got a tremendous amount of swagger. He hits the ball really hard, and not just hard. He hits it well. It's flush. I think he's going to be a star out here. Christopher Ventura being on the list, I have foolishly bet him in this tournament a couple different times for the same reason we just talked about Potgieter. Just he hits it hard. Really lacks consistency, but he did get back to the PGA Tour. He does have some experience on the PGA Tour over players in the field. Jackson Suber's down the bottom of that list. I like him quite a bit. We do a show about the Korn Ferry Tour over at Golf Newsnet, so getting to see a lot of these guys kind of trying to make the transition. I love Tristan Lawrence. I love his game. He had, 4 second-place finishes last year in the DP World Tour. Just he gets in contention so often and not in dud events. He gets in contention in good events. I don't know how well that game will translate this week, but he's playing here this week. He's not playing Kenya, an event on the DP World Tour where he has a very good track record. So he obviously feels the money and the points are worth it, to come play here this week and not try to go get some free money and points over there. And then one guy I probably won't get to as you're scrolling. Oh, there he is. Carl Phillips, man. Carl Phillips won in his 6th start as a professional golfer on the Korn Ferry Tour and got a PGA Tour card. The guy is a stud. He's going to be great. He signed with Tiger Sunday Red Brand, and I don't think that's by mistake. What's that?
What kind of course is it that he won at? Is he a bomber? Is he an off the tee guy? Is he a great putter? What's his like?
He seems kind of like a total package kind of guy, like the modern young guy. Just you got to hit it far to be modern young guys got to hit it far, and then putts it pretty well. I really like his game a lot, and that he is sitting at that 125, 150 range, depending on where you look, without a whole lot of evidence around it. I think that tells you what the other side of this conversation thinks of him or what he can be. That without basically any evidence, he's 125 to 1 and better than Sammy Valimaki, who almost won this event. Nate Lashley, multi-time winner. I mean, they're already kind of putting him without much data into a space where they expect him to maybe be an interesting threat.
Yeah, absolutely. Love a couple of those mentions. I'm going to have my full card out as always on Wednesday. Big action-packed day for me tomorrow. Got a couple of articles and pieces coming out, as well as going to the Jupiter. Going to see the Lynx take on the New York Golf Club. A couple of teams need a win tomorrow night in TGL. We going to get you down here for any matches, Ryan? You think you might make a trip?
I'm going to try to come down. I was going to have a family golf trip a week from now. I was going to try and come down for that. That didn't quite work out, but I want to come down before the season ends because I've really enjoyed watching this, and I've seen your stuff from X and just talking about kind of the venue and being able to go and other folks as well. And kind of a little jealous, and I'd like to go see the place before your one's done.
Yeah, man. Well, I don't speak for them, but I'd love to see you down there. And of course, if you get down, make sure to shoot me a text. Maybe we'll sneak out for a round of golf earlier in the day or Sunday or something like that. Always a good time to chat with you, Ryan. You are always well-informed and an appreciative guest of this program each time you come on. So thank you for making some time for me Monday night. Tell everyone that's watching this show now, if they aren't familiar, where they can follow you and some of the stuff that you put out each and every week.
Well, Joe, thank you again for having me on. Easiest way to find me is either one of two ways, either at my name, at Ryan Ballengee on Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, or at Golf News Net on all those same places.
Thanks, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you.
All right, see ya. All right, good stuff from Ryan. As always, one of my favorite people to talk to, just generally about golf stuff. And then he obviously has some great insight on a lot of the Korn Ferry guys and some of the guys that I'm less familiar with on the DP World Tour. So a little bit of an education for me. Here's a little comment that popped up. Watched LIV for the first time, and I have to say I was really impressed with their product. So am I, man. Every time that I watch, I enjoy a lot of the on-screen elements that they have. They're utilizing colors and scoring averages, and even the live line on the greens, I think, is really helpful. I think that if you take politics and how you feel about the Saudis out of it, they have created an avenue for growth in the game and created an avenue for the PGA Tour and these other entities to feel a little bit of pressure of we've got to get better. And they've done that. I think CBS has done an incredible job of covering the PGA Tour. It's time for us to finally sit at the table and get this thing all worked out, and I'm hopeful for it. But I agree with you. There are a ton of visual elements. As someone who puts a lot of work into this show and kind of does that in my 9-to-5 day job, I pay very close attention to making something appealing to the eye on the screen. I hope this does that for you a little bit, but something they're pretty good at. Good evening to everyone. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy week to watch this show. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel on the way out. That would be absolutely huge. I have some big goals in mind for this year, and you can be a part of helping me reach those. Share with a friend, thumbs up the tweet, maybe retweet it. Great to see you once again. Good luck at the Mexico Open. I'll catch you guys next week. I'm out of here. Signing off from Preferred Lines in the Mexico Open Show. My name is Joe Idoni.